Whoever would overthrow the liberty of a nation must begin by subduing the freeness of speech. Silence Dogood, pseudonym of Benjamin Franklin. All right. Welcome to another episode of the Liberty Dad Podcast, a discussion on politics and culture. I'm your host, DL, America's most objective libertarian. If you're tuning in live, thank you so much for giving me your time. I would normally say time so early. However, I was having a lot of problems this morning, and I ended up canceling the stream because Rumble was just not cutting it. It wasn't having it. But everything appears to be good to go. So let's get into it. My friends, free speech is the bedrock of a free society. For without the unfettered exchange of ideas, tyranny creeps in under the guise of order. It's not the popular opinions that need protection, but the ones that rile the crowd. Those are the sparks that light the flame of liberty. Let the government muzzle one voice today, and tomorrow it'll be yours. Because power don't stop till it's forced to. All right. What are we talking about today? We're going to talk about two things. They're kind of related, but kind of not. We're going to talk about, was it Mohammed? Mohammed? I always want to like say Muhammad. Mahmoud Khalil, I think is how you say his name. We're going to talk about him. And we're going to talk about Thomas Massie, a name that I have no trouble pronouncing. And so I'm just going to kind of give my thoughts on both of those. I don't know that I'm going to try to tie them together. I can tell you this much. This show's probably going to be a bit long. So just buckle up, Buttercup. It's going to be a bit long. And what that means is probably tomorrow morning, I will probably not do an episode because after this, I'm going to go and spend time with family and I won't have time to prepare. And I probably should have split these up into two, but I was trying to do the one on the Palestinian activists out of Colombia this morning. And then I saw some news regarding Thomas Massie. And I was like, well, I had a lot of thoughts. And as I was kind of preparing, I just kind of threw them all together in the same bucket. So here we are. So that's what we're going to do. All right. So let me play this first video clip here. And this video clip kind of gives us a little bit of a rundown. This comes from the New York Post. And this gives us a little bit of a rundown of Mahmoud Khalil. So let's do it.
This is not a matter of simply violating university rules. This is a movement, an anti-war movement.
Agents from President Donald Trump's administration have arrested Palestinian graduate student Mahmoud Khalil, who played a prominent role in last year's pro-Palestinian protests at New York's Columbia University. That's according to a statement released by the Student Workers Labor.
Let me just pause right there and just kind of point out they showed an encampment, which I assume was from Columbia, although it's the media, so you never know. Presuming that was true, there was an awful lot of tents there. So has anybody else been arrested, or are we just going after who seems to be the ringleader? Throwing that out there.
Union, which added that Khalil was arrested by U.S. Department of Homeland Security agents at his university residence on Saturday. Khalil has been one of the lead negotiators with school administrators on behalf of the pro-Palestinian student protesters. His detention appears to be one of the first efforts by Trump to fulfill his promise to seek the deportation of some foreign students involved in the pro-Palestinian protest movement against Israel's war in Gaza that swept college campuses last spring. A spokesperson for Columbia said the school was barred by law from sharing information about individual students. Spokespeople for Trump, DHS, and the Department of State did not respond to questions. It was not immediately clear on what grounds DHS agents arrested Khalil. Khalil's arrest comes on the heels of the Trump administration canceling government contracts and grants awarded to Columbia University worth about $400 million. The government said the cuts in the student deportation efforts are because of anti-Semitic harassment at and near Columbia's Manhattan campus.
So let's just be clear. Harassment? Like, what does that mean? If we're just talking about people saying unsavory things toward Jewish students, well, that's wrong, but that's not a crime. Right? Now, if they threatened them, if they harmed them in any way, right? If they physically prevented them from going about their business, those are crimes and they should be dealt with. And as we'll see, we should have all the evidence that we need to say, this is what you did. This is why you're in trouble. That's not really the case. Let's continue. We got a few seconds left.
In response, Columbia's interim president said the school was committed to combating anti-Semitism and was working with the federal government to address their legitimate concerns.
Okay, so they're working with the federal government. The question is, are they doing what they should be doing? I don't know. Right. Like, and we don't, they can say that they're doing this and that, and they can say that, here are the reports that we've received and, without a full investigation and saying, here are the reports that you received. Here's what you did about it, so on and so forth. It's really unclear to what extent they're actually already involved in doing things. So, but let's check out this. Let's see how it played out on X a little bit. So here's the White House. And they posted Shalom Mahmoud, and then they quote Donald Trump, President Donald Trump. ICE proudly apprehended and detained Mahmoud Khalil, a radical foreign pro-Hamas student on the campus of Columbia University. This is the first arrest of many to come. Okay. The question is, of course, arrested for what? Being pro-Hamas, you can call it vile. I'll agree with you, but that's not a crime. Whether you that's and this is the point of free speech. A lot of free speech is vile, but that doesn't necessarily make it a crime. Then we had Donald Trump. He posted out. He says, following my previously signed executive orders, ICE proudly apprehended and detained Mahmoud Khalil, a radical foreign pro-Hamas student on the campus of Columbia University. This is the first of many to come. We know there are more students at Columbia and other universities across the country who have engaged in pro-terrorist, anti-Semitic, anti-American activity, and the Trump administration will not tolerate it. Okay, question. What constitutes pro-terrorist? And anti-Semitic? That's not a crime. It's not a crime to dislike a group of people, even if your reasons are stupid. Anti-American, it's foolish, not really a good idea here in America to say, oh, I'd love to come to your country and go to school and do all these other things. By the way, I hate every last one of you. Not wise, but it's not a crime, right? And this is what we have to, because one of two things can happen with governments. And we've seen this over and over. Number one, they will start with the people that are the easy targets. Easy targets meaning most people won't object. This is where you get the first they came for so-and-so, then they came for so-and-so. Then by the time they got to come, by the time they came for me, there was no one left to stand up for me, right? That poem, right? That's where you get that. The other thing that they do, that the government likes to do, is they'll do something and they'll go grab some easy pickings and they'll be like, see, look what we did. We did all of this. And you're like, well, yeah, but was that really the source of our problems? Is that what we actually asked you for? And usually the case is no. They just went after something easy. They got a win. They ran around with it, and everybody eats it up. Let's continue reading. Many are not students. They are paid agitators. So again, not a crime. We will find, apprehend, and deport these terrorist sympathizers from our country, never to return again. If you support terrorism, including the slaughtering of innocent men, women, and children, your presence is contrary to our national and foreign policy interests, and you are not welcome here. We expect every one of America's colleges and universities to comply. Thank you. I just want you in the back of your mind. Don't put it too far. But where he said, if you support terrorism, including the slaughtering of innocent men, women, and children, your presence is contrary to our national and foreign policy interests. I want you to keep that in mind. We'll get back to that. We're going to come right back to that just in a few minutes, I promise you. All right, what else? Then we had the Department of Homeland Security. They tweeted out on March 9th, 2025, in support of President Trump's executive orders prohibiting anti-Semitism and in coordination with the Department of State, U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement, arrested Mahmoud Khalil, a former Columbia University graduate student. Khalil led activities aligned to Hamas. What does aligned to Hamas mean? Was he like, I support Hamas? I want Hamas to do more atrocities, more vile actions against people? Was he saying that? Because I haven't seen evidence of it yet. So far, we're basically making a guilt by association. And then it says a designated terrorist organization. I got to comment on that here in a few minutes. ICE and the Department of State are committed to enforcing President Trump's executive orders and to protecting U.S. national security. Remember the other day I told you, I said, government loves two things. They like to talk about national security and they like to talk about interstate commerce. And they like the federal government. They love, they'll just put anything in there. And they have, and you can go back and you can look historically, and they have. All right, that conversation for another day. Then we get Marco Rubio. He comes out and he says, we will be revoking the visas and or green cards of Hamas supporters in America so they can be deported. So again, what constitutes a Hamas supporter? That's a big question. You mean it might sound silly, like DL, of course, like, what do you mean? Because a lot of people that are opposing Israel's actions in Palestine, they are labeled Hamas supporters. People who oppose the war in Ukraine have been labeled Russian supporters. But it's not true. There are Hamas supporters. And we can have a conversation about what, if anything, to do with them. But we have to make the distinction. This person is reasonably understood by most Americans as supporting Hamas, whereas this person over here, they're not supporting Hamas so much as they're opposing the actions of Israel in Palestine. That is a huge distinction. And we have many Americans who will fall in that distinction. Most of them, almost all of them, I can't say all, but almost all of them are almost certainly, the ones that oppose the actions going to be, hey, I'm not pro-Hamas. I am pro-innocent lives not being killed. That's the position I take. And I'm on record in the past saying, look, if you want to kill Hamas, like actual Hamas fighters, go right ahead. Kill them. Not really interested in not having a conversation about it. Do what you got to do, because we know that Hamas perpetrated atrocities, period. So if you are Hamas and Israel kills you, I'm not too worried about it. It's a different conversation when we get to innocent civilians. So we have a lot of people in power that that are coming out, and they're making a lot of vague comments. Now, I found this from let me see, where do I want to go in my notes here? So that was a story. You know what? Let's before I get to Fire's response, let's look at some of the comments that I was able to find just regarding what's happened here. So let's take a look at some of those because that'll be fun. All right. So let's see. There we go. All right. So here we go. Um, led activities aligned to Hamas. See, somebody else pointed this out. He organized some protests you didn't like. That's the translation. What else we got here? This is disgraceful attack on the First Amendment and what it means to have permanent residency in the United States. The fact that this is a tweet from the official White House account is despicable. I agree. I think it is. Let's see here. Where are we got? The rule of law is what made America different. It is what made us great. It is what made us good. And we're trading it for a mess of pottage. Let's see here. Why is it something? All right. I think my navigation on this is being a little bit wonky, but whatever. The left are rallying around a terrorist supporter because political violence is a core leftist value. Right? So this is what happens. People just say, "Oh, this is a terrorist supporter, so therefore you support political violence." Well, we haven't determined he's a terrorist supporter just yet. I haven't seen the evidence. People right now are just posting, like, "Oh, he led this. He led some protest at Columbia University. Oh, one of the protests, which he wasn't at, by the way, one of the protests, they blockaded students and they took over like a building. But again, he wasn't there. So then the question is, well, since he wasn't there, did he lead people and say, "Hey, you go do this"? Right? But if he didn't, if he just said, "Hey, let's protest," and he's using his voice to rally people, and then people are doing things that he may or may not agree with, that is something that needs to be addressed. Let's see what else. Oh, my stuff is going all wonky here with my. Oh goodness. Oh, you know what? I bet I know what happened. That's what happened. Okay, there we go. It was clicked on a random playback. And so it was randomly selecting different numbers. And I was like, this is not the order that I wanted in. Okay. What crimes did he commit? List the specific laws he violated by expressing opinions contrary to the approved U.S. government narrative. This was a state-executed disappearance for wrongthink, no different from what happens in Russia, minus the defenestration. I agree. Let's see what else we got. Okay, we'll skip past the ones I've already read. You detained a U.S. green card holder who is married to a U.S. citizen for protesting against Israel. Every effing anti-Semitic trope you people claim to be false, you are confirming to the world to be true. I don't know about the second part there, but yes, they detained a green card holder married to a U.S. citizen for what we know right at this point for protesting Israel. That's what the deal was. Deporting people for protesting ideas is genuinely evil. Yes, it is. All y'all applauding this are effing stupid, disrespectfully. If you let the feds get away with disappearing a permanent resident who was charged with no crimes for protesting government actions, don't think for a minute they won't come for you someday. True. Very true. How many movies have we seen where we saw just that very thing happen? ICE kidnapped a political dissident for exercising his right to protest. I like the word kidnapped, and I think that's the word we should use until the government comes out and says, here are the charges, here are the actual crimes that this man is accused of committing. Not just random comments like terrorist supporter, sympathizer. I need to know, I want due process, just like anybody else in this country. Let's see what else we got here. Honest question. Mahmoud's arrest is being justified as anti-terrorism. I haven't found a statement he's made supporting or opposing Hamas, but he is a leader of CUAD, which has made statements supporting Hamas's actions. Is that sufficient for deporting a green card holder? Maybe if he actually is engaging in some level of terrorist support. But again, we haven't seen any charges. We've just seen somebody get scooped up by the government because apparently that's okay. I don't care if it's, quote, for Israel. Deporting Muslims is always good. Okay. Well, we'll let that be your little secret. Let's see. Oh, we already played that one. The United States will no longer tolerate terrorist sympathizers residing in our country. Okay. We must immediately take up the no immigration benefits for Hamas terrorist act to ensure anyone associated with Hamas or Palestinian Islamic Jihad is immediately removed from this country. Anyone? Or do they just mean like foreign-born foreign nationals? Right? You see how people are loose with their words? This is a representative. This is the actual person that's elected to office. And they're like, well, anyone. Oh. And then we're not even clear who gets to be counted as somebody who's associated with Hamas or Palestinian Islamic Jihad. Is it just somebody that opposes Israel? Or do you actually have to have said and maybe done some things explicitly in support of Hamas? Don't have those answers either. Let's see. We'll do this last one here. We may hate what he says, but we must defend his right to say it freely within the law. That's free speech. It is not illegal under 1A to voice support for a prescribed group unless this is judged to constitute an imminent threat of violence. There it is. I totally agree. So that's some of the responses that we got on the internet. I got this article from Fire, and Fire, if you're not familiar with, they're basically doing the work that the ACLU used to do. So they go out and they defend people, legally. And so they're doing that here. So let's pull this article up real quick. And I'm not going to read the whole thing, but Fire demands answers from Trump admin officials on arrest of Mahmoud Khalil. This was dated March 10th, so just yesterday. So we're going to skip down here. This is the letter. The link is in the show notes if you want to read the whole thing. But here in the letter that they sent the government, they said the federal government must not use immigration enforcement to punish and filter out ideas disfavored by the administration. It's very much what it sounds like. It must also afford due process to anyone facing arrest and detention and must be clear and transparent about the basis for its actions to avoid chilling protected speech. To that end, we request answers to the following questions. What was the specific legal and factual basis for Mr. Khalil's arrest on March 8th? What is the specific legal and factual basis for Mr. Khalil's detention? What is the specific legal and factual basis on which you are seeking revocation of Mr. Khalil's green card? Will Mr. Khalil be afforded the due process protections required by U.S. law? Is it your intention to seek the revocation of lawful immigration status on the basis of speech protected by the First Amendment? These are all great questions, and we should be demanding answers. Now, again, you can hate everything that he stands for. You do not have to support Mr. Khalil. You could say, like, look, I'm against war, and maybe he said some things that you think are very vile, and you oppose them, and you're like, I would have never said those things, and I don't want to be associated with somebody that says those things. That's fine. But you absolutely need to make sure that you protect the First Amendment, and you protect your First Amendment right by ensuring that others who maybe are using it in a more radical way are also protected. Because what happens when they run out of radical people to go after? Well, now they've got this institution, this system in place, and it doesn't stop. The federal government has not shown where they're like, all right, we're going to implement this program. We're going to do this thing. We're going to root out all these evil people, and then we're going to close up shop, and then we're going to go away, and then we'll only come back if the need arises later. That's not how it works. What they do is they say, we're going to go after all these terrible, evil people, and then once we get them, well, they don't say it. They're like, oh, but we found some more over here, and we found some more over here, because the bar for who's the bad person who needs to be going after, it gets it gets lower and lower, because you run out of the people that meet the high threshold. So then you just lower it a little bit. You're like, well, you know what? We took care of all these guys, but these guys over here, they could be the next problem. So we better get them too. So here's the facts of the case. Mahmoud Khalil is a Palestinian activist who was born in Syria. He graduated from Columbia University's School of International and Public Affairs with a Master's of Public Administration in December of 2024. He is a U.S. green card holder, making him a lawful permanent resident. Just want to point out, this whole immigration thing leading up to the election, it was all about protecting us from like Venezuelan gangs and other violent criminals who are sneaking into the country. This guy's not even sneaking in the country. He's a lawful permanent resident. And that's who they decided to utilize their resources to go after. On March 8, 2025, around 8:30 p.m., ICE agents arrested him. He was reported to be held at the Elizabeth Detention Center in New Jersey, but his wife was told that he was not there the next day when she went to go and see him. Then on March 10th, ICE's online detainee locator confirmed his transfer to the Jenna LaSalle detention facility in Louisiana. Also on March 9th, his attorney filed a habeas corpus petition in Manhattan federal court challenging the legality of his detention. March 10th, Judge Jesse Furman issued an order blocking his deportation until a hearing scheduled for Wednesday, March 12th. I want you to think about this for a minute. This is happening so fast that they actually had to get a judge to issue an order to block his deportation. We don't even know the specific charges, yet the government's ready to deport him. We don't even know what the charges are. Like, was he sending money and supplies, helping purchase supplies for Hamas? Was he doing anything? Was he like trying to set up little Hamas camps here? Was he doing any of that? Or was he just leading the charge on anti-war and people don't like the country that he was challenging? Columbia's protest last year involved encampments and building occupations, but Khalil was not among those who seized buildings. He acted as a mediator with administrators. So far, from what I could find, and I didn't deep dig, but from what I could find, I'm not really seeing any evidence that he actually committed a crime. And I definitely don't see any evidence that he personally called for violence, which would be a big deal to me. Actually, you know what? I take it back. It's not really true. I have a video here. This may be an exclusive video. This video is of Mahmoud calling for the extermination of an entire group of people. Okay? So let's just go ahead and play this video.
Israel should make the Gaza Strip a parking lot by this time next week. Destroy the whole thing.
Oh, wait a minute. I'm sorry. That wasn't Khalil calling for the extermination of an entire group of people. That was an American citizen here in the United States. Pastor, chuckle at that, Pastor Greg Locke. And he's not alone. There were after the October 7th assault on Israel from Hamas. After that happened, I mean, I could have put together a montage of people that literally said, turn Gaza into a parking lot, turn it into glass, wipe out everything, annihilate it all. So when people come out and they're like, we got to deport this guy because he was, leading some protest, we don't have any evidence that he was actually calling for the mass extermination, but we got to get him because that's not acceptable in America. Bullshit. It sure as hell is. It just depends on, are you on the right side or the wrong side of calling for the extermination of an entire group of people? Because I don't know if people realize this. My audience definitely does. But I don't know if many other people realize this. But over in Palestine, there's this interesting thing where it's not entirely Hamas. There are actually a lot of women and children who are arguably not part of Hamas. And how can I say that? Well, remember the argument a while back? Hamas uses civilians as human shields. They hide behind them. And that was the justification for, sending over, rockets and just, demolishing entire hospitals and whatnot. And so the justification was, well, they're hiding behind civilians. Are you really Hamas if Hamas is hiding behind you? Or are you somebody that's being used by Hamas and they don't care about your life? Right? So we can logically deduce that there are many people living in Gaza that are innocent, And yet we had Americans calling for their total extermination. So miss me with this whole, oh, he's a terrorist sympathizer. Some of your Americans are. So how about that? How about you go protest outside of his church and be like, hey, man, it's one thing to call for the destruction of Hamas. It's another thing, quite another thing, to call for the annihilation of women and children. By the way, I don't know the numbers off the top of my head, but I believe that somewhere around half or more than half of all people living in Gaza are not even adults. Like, they got a lot of children. They can't even vote if they wanted to, if there were an election, which there hasn't been since Hamas got into power. We're not going to go down that road, but just suffice it to say that they canceled the next election, and there are at least half of the people who couldn't even vote them out if they wanted to. And if Hamas is hiding behind them, presumably they don't have a lot of power to work with. So when people say, well, why don't they just do something about it? I don't know, Fred. What are the children supposed to do? Rise up and take out terrorists? Are you stupid? Kind of know the answer to that. Anyway, here's the problem. And I don't know if anybody's noticed this, but if you chant from the river to the sea, it's taken as exterminating Israel. That's seen as terrorism. But making calls for Gaza to turn it into a parking lot or a piece of glass, that's not terrorism. That's just self-defense. America, you have a morality problem. But furthermore, let's point something out. One of my friends pointed out something very interesting. There was a long post from somebody named Melissa Chen. She basically pointed out, I'm not going to read it, but it was a long post, and she was suggesting, or not suggesting, but she was saying, like, hey, as an immigrant, I come over here, and I basically played by the rules, so on and so forth. But what happens when, these rules that we're using now are in the hands of people that we oppose later, basically the Democrats, right? And so my friend made this point, which I thought was very good. So I'm going to pull that up. What's that, image one? Yeah, right here. So this is from Sarah Higdon. It's a great point. She says, great point. Remember when the Biden admin called moms at school board meetings terrorist? You remember that, folks? I remember that. They literally called them terrorists. Moms who were going to school board meetings, throwing a fit because there was like 5 or 6 books that were not appropriate for elementary students. And they were going in there, were like picking up the book, and they were reading, and they were like reading it out loud. And then they were getting kicked out because the language was too offensive for a room full of adults, but it was supposedly acceptable for children. And then that ended up getting them called terrorists for basically being a parent. So then she goes on to say, now, what if one of those moms was a green card holder? Under this precedent, the Biden admin or the next Dem could deport them for wrongthink without due process. See the problem here? This is why we have to guard the First Amendment with a fury, right? We've got with a fury. We have to guard it with our lives effectively, because we never know how it's going to be used, how these laws will be used against us. So there are some unresolved issues here. There's no concrete evidence of illegal activity presented by the government. First and foremost, that should be a non-starter. End of story. We're done. We're done talking. You didn't present any evidence? Then no, let the man go. The same as they would anybody else. Number 2, green card revocation requires a judicial process. An executive order raises very serious constitutional concerns. Not that they've really cared a lot about our Constitution, but whatever semblance of a Constitution that we might still have, we really need to cling to that, because once it's gone, who knows what happens. Freedom of speech, whether it's protesting, whether it's supporting a side that other people don't like, or whether it's just simply saying unsavory things, that is paramount to this country. But remember, the whole issue of immigration was supposed to be about dealing with violent criminals like Venezuelan gangs taking over apartment complexes. Like, where is the news about getting those guys? I didn't see Trump talking about, hey, we rounded up all these Venezuelan gangs and Colorado, I can't remember which city it is, but Colorado is free of Venezuelan gangs. And the peaceful people that were living in apartment complexes that were subject to Venezuelan gangs, they're free now. They should have never had that problem in the first place in America, but golly gee, they're free. I don't see Trump talking about that. We were supposed to be preventing the next Laken Riley. Remember all those? Say her name, say her name. They got mad at Biden. Say her name. And now they're like, yeah, let's deport some college kids that are saying things we don't like. It was supposed to be about stopping the masses of people from coming here and joining the welfare system. Whether you believe that to be true or not, those were the things that this whole immigration thing was supposed to be about. And yet here we are using it to go after college students, making a name for himself. Not a good one, in my opinion. If DHS has evidence of an actual crime, then, similar to the Tates, it should be pursued. Otherwise, GTFO. Let people go and GTFO, get out. And to those saying the First Amendment doesn't apply to foreign-born people, I suggest you spend some time reviewing case law, cure your ignorance, and read the Constitution. I don't really have time to walk you through it. But I think once you go and you read, look at books, documents, the little symbols on the pages, and think about it, I think you'll recognize and be like, oh, the First Amendment absolutely does. All right, let me get to some comments here, and then we will go to intermission, and then we'll come back for what will really make people angry, I guess. So let's see what we got here. Joe Anoush says, get that third-rate grandstander Massie out of the Republican Party. That's what I'm going to talk about here shortly. We're in just a few moments here. We're going to talk about that. Let's see. It looks like most of the conversation here is unrelated to the podcast. So I think that'll be fine. Let me see what we got here. Okay. Yeah. Yikes. Liberty Dad getting spicy. Maybe. Could be getting worse. Who knows? We'll see. But for right now, we're going to go to intermission. We will come back and we will talk about Thomas Massie. Hey, Liberty fam, do me a favor. If you enjoy the show, be sure to hit the like and subscribe button to my channel. And for the really serious folks out there, I want you to hit that bell so that you never miss an episode. By the way, if you want to support the show, head over to libertydad.locals.com and sign up. For $5, you can be part of this show. There, I'll engage supporters of the show. We'll discuss topics that you want me to talk about, response videos that you would like to see, or anything related to the show. And I'll even have a monthly subscribers only episode. By the way, I'm always looking for dads to join me for Dad Talk. That's my series where I invite everyday dads on to talk about what's important to them in the context of being a dad. No argument, no debate, and dads choose the topic. It's my way of raising dad voices. If you're a dad or you know a dad who has something to say, let's get connected. Episodes air live on Friday mornings or Friday evenings, whichever works best for dads. All right, let's get back to the show. All right. Let's talk about what's going to make some people really angry, because I tend to be good at that. So let's talk about Trump's latest call to primary Thomas Massie. So let's take a look at this image here and let's see what he said. All right, so here's what he said. Where's my, there we go. Thank you to the House Freedom Caucus for just delivering a big blow to the radical left Democrats and their desire to raise taxes and shut our country down. They hate America and all it stands for. That's why they allowed millions of criminals to invade our nation. Weird. I just talked about that. I just said that's what he was supposed to be dealing with. But he's dealing with college students who presumably who's a green card holder. So that's not really an invasion. Anyway, sometimes it takes great courage to do the right thing. Congressman Thomas Massie of beautiful Kentucky is an automatic no vote on just about everything, despite the fact that he has always voted for continuing resolutions in the past. He should be primaried, and I will lead the charge against him. He's just another grandstander who's too much trouble and not worth the fight. He reminds me of Liz Cheney before her historic record-breaking fall. The people of Kentucky won't stand for it. Just watch. Do I have any takers? Anyway, thank you again to the House Freedom Caucus for your very important vote. We need to buy some time in order to make America great again, greater than ever before. Unite and win. All right. So then I had my response, and this got some momentum here. Where did my response go? Where did it did I lose it? Let me see here. Let me see if I can't give me a second. I will grab my response here. I guess I didn't cue that up. So apologies, folks, for that. Let's see here. I think it's here. And yes, here it is. So give me just a second. Almost there. Couple things on the screen here. All right. There we are. And it's a little bit off center, but that's okay. It's going to work. All right. So here's what I said in response to that. I said, good. Good time for that alleged libertarian influence / relevance / seat at the table right now. DL, why be a jerk? Recall how many treated me and others over cynicism of Trump? That's why. If Massie is primaried, Trump voters will own it, including libertarian Trump voters. And they ain't like that so much. And that's just the way that it goes. Right? So, and like that tweet got some momentum. And as usual, some libertarians came barking at me like an angry dog.
Oh, I see you and your friend Cujo here got a little attitude. No problem, needs some readjusting. Well, I'm gonna fix that up quick, fast, and in a hurry.
Yeah, that's my mood right now. It's the way it is. It's my mood. But anyway, let's get into something. There's a time and a place for arguments and debate, and it should not come without a reasonable argument backing it up. Okay, it's fun to poke a little bit, be like, yeah, have a laugh at them. Like you guys are barking dogs. In the movie, if you've seen that movie, it's an old movie. I'm an old. What can I say? He basically went and shaved their head bald like him. So I'm really partial to that. So what is it? What is my argument that libertarians should own this? Better question is it fair to blame libertarians who voted for Trump for everything that he does that we dislike? The answer to that is no. However, they do need to take responsibility for the things that they could have reasonably been foretold. So think about this for a second. You vote for anybody. You don't know everything that they're going to do. You vote for them based on what you know in the moment. So in the moment, we knew where a lot of his support existed. We knew this. We had these conversations. We saw all the anti-Semitic laws being passed by the Republican Party all across the U.S. Should not be surprising that he started engaging in that. RFK did. I talked about that on my episode a while back, like a few episodes ago. Talked about how the Department of Health and Human Services was going out and championing these issues to take on anti-Semitism. Like, okay, we not me necessarily, but the people that voted for him, they voted on the basis that you would clean up our food supply, not use yet a government agency to fight anti-Semitism. So let me start with some logic. I think that libertarians it might work. Let's see. You know how teachers will often say, if you can read, thank a teacher. But then when you criticize them, about children that are in masses that cannot read or read poorly, what do they do? What do they say? Like, oh, well, our profession really needs to level up. Or do they say, man, we got a lot of bad teachers that need to be fired? Not really. The usual defense is parents, administration, funding, etc. It's like they want to take credit for all the good outcomes, but then shift blame when it's time to talk about the bad outcomes. But you might say, well, DL, it's not really a good analogy. Libertarians are no friend of public schools for a variety of reasons. Okay. Here's another more potent illustration of the point. Most, not all, of the libertarians who voted for Trump are the same libertarians who have no problem acknowledging Russia's invasion of Ukraine was immoral, to say the least. They are also the same libertarians who will go on about NATO and U.S. foreign policy contributing to this outcome, for which I agree is a conversation to be had. In other words, libertarians already believe in the idea that outcomes tomorrow by one entity's actions today can impose a level of responsibility, even if that same entity, be it a group or an individual, does not support tomorrow's outcome. So even though NATO would say, "Hey, we don't support Russia invading Ukraine," libertarians are quite happy to say, "Yeah, but your actions helped lead us to this point." The US government's foreign policy actions, even though it doesn't support Russia invading Ukraine, their actions have led us to this point. They need to take some responsibility. Now, what did I say the other day during Dad Talk? If that's not enough, I told you, I said, wives, sleep with your husbands or someone else will. A wife not sleeping with her husband is no excuse for a husband's infidelity. He owns that. However, most people would agree that a wife that neglects intimacy with her husband has a foothold for something terrible, has allowed a foothold for something terrible to enter into their marriage, right? These examples are not one-to-one. Analogies rarely are, but they do illustrate that most people recognize in multiple areas here, most people recognize that actions today contribute to bad things tomorrow, and that there is sometimes a level of culpability. Not always. And that culpability may be somebody else, like in the case of a husband and wife. It's like you're not responsible for your husband's infidelity per se, but you have your own responsibility that contributed to this poor outcome. That you could have done things differently and perhaps prevented this. Again, not victim blaming, because that's where people want to go. They're like, "Oh, you blaming the victim?" No, I'm saying when you have two people making decisions, or when you have two entities, sometimes it's not people, sometimes it's group, and they're making decisions, those decisions have consequences. Sometimes good, sometimes bad. The idea that libertarians who voted for Trump bear zero responsibility for at least some of the things he does is asinine, and that's just libertarians trying to escape accountability when they themselves have no problem holding others to similar standards. The reason that Thomas Massie is so well respected is because he has built a reputation on transparency, honesty, and accountability. He comes out and he defends his votes rather than insulting people who disagree. So when I come out and I say, "Hey, I think you're culpable," and then I get the long list of, people were doing that today, lots of wordy things to basically make an ad hominem attack against me. Fine, whatever. But you know what? Let's address some of the counterpoints. And then I will tell you what I think is the actionable takeaway here. So here's some counterpoints. People that, with this whole do libertarians bear responsibility for what Trump is doing, right? And again, the answer, in my opinion, is not in full, it's in part, right? We knew that anti-Semitic legislation and resolutions were happening all across the country, from the state level to the national level to even the local level, right? They did so here in Jacksonville. And I've got podcasts where I talk about that. Okay. And so when it comes to, hey, this Khalil deal, that is Trump kind of following this path that was already laid, that we all knew about it. Yeah, you contributed to that. You did. Because you knew that he had some allegiance that we didn't agree with. And here he is exercising that allegiance. All right, so some counterpoints. What about all of the wins? Right? Isn't that important? Sometimes trade-offs. That we got to talk about that. And that's a fair argument. Like, what about the wins? Okay, freeing Ross, right? That's an absolute win, hands down. Trump promised it. He delivered it, period. End of story. The great thing about that, the absolute awesome thing, is it cannot in any way be reversed. It is a sealed deal. And in episode 443, I gave credit where it was due, right? I had no problem with that. I'm like, yeah. And I was cynical. I admit, I didn't think he would come through. And I think when I look back and I look at my rationale for saying, hey, I don't think he's going to come through. I don't think he's going to do it. I look back and I say, my rationale was built on a reasonable perspective of the information that I had available. Other people took a gamble and they felt confident that he would deliver. Okay, fair, right? Cool. But I will acknowledge, hands down, win. End of story. And yeah, I know some people are like, but it wasn't on the first day. It was day one. Like it was so close to day one. Call it day one. When this, like, the man's got all, and I again, I go through this and I break down why it should be considered a day one promise in episode 443. You can go check that out. All right. How about Doge? Doge uncovered a lot of waste, right? Well, number one, Doge, if you actually look at your timeline, Doge happened after a lot of libertarians said that they were going to support Trump, right? Because if you look at the timeline, it was official. Hey, Elon, why don't I set you and Vivek Ramaswamy up to run Doge, right? We were talking about it beforehand, but there was nothing official. And when I say official, there was no like official campaign promise or anything along that line initially, right? It was just something that Elon had kind of thrown out and was getting momentum for good reason, right? So shouldn't we celebrate Doge because it uncovered all this waste? Well, here's the thing. Congress passed the latest continuing resolution, which would refund all of that. Massie was the only Republican to vote no in the House. The only one. My concern about Trump this whole time is I'm like, what happens if Congress doesn't flip over? And I know there's some arguments where people are like, yeah, Trump's kind of using his executive power to kind of force Congress to do the right. Yeah, right. Right. Sure he is. Because from what I can see, it looks like he flexed his executive power to get them to pass the latest CR. That's what it looks like to me. Doesn't look like he's flexing his muscle so that they will get in line and stop funding things that they shouldn't be funding. So I don't know that you're going to call this a win, right? Because it's not a win to tell people about waste and then continue wasting it. Like, if I evaluate our financials here at the house and I identify that we've been spending too much money on something, and I tell my wife, and I'm like, hey, look, did you know this? We were spending all this money here. We should stop spending this. And she might go, wow, you're right. I can't believe this. Like, how did this go under our radar? Right. And then we just continue spending. What was the point? It's not a win if we keep spending. Same thing with the government. Now, to be fair, Doge has until July 4th, 2026. So perhaps by then it will deliver tangible and unmistakable wins. And wins for me means they can't just be rolled back so simply. So if there's an executive order that at least temporarily stops something through Donald Trump's presidency, but then somebody else gets elected, Democrat or Republican, and then they rescind them, well, then it wasn't a win. It was like a temporary win. It's kind of like a partial win. Like, this is why I distinguish the Ross win as a full-on win. It's not being changed. Now, technically, anything in government can change, right? They can pass a new law. They can do all kinds of different things. But I'm looking for something more than just an executive order. Because I don't know if you guys noticed this, but as soon as Trump got into office, he rescinded like some 70 or so executive orders that Biden had passed. And when Biden got into office, he rescinded a whole bunch of executive orders that Trump had passed. So they're basically playing volleyball with executive orders. Our wins are basically a volley back and forth across the net. That's not a win. And I just want to point out, episode 456, I reviewed Doge. The Doge executive order. And I found it pretty good. I liked it. I support it. So I'm not a hater. I'm just trying to look at things and saying, what am I actually getting that's tangible, that I can, in a sense, hold in my hand and say, this is an absolute win. Okay, let's look about, what about cabinet appointments? Surely there's some wins there, right? Yeah, Bondi, Patel, RFK Jr., right? It's just to name a few. Well, first, getting people into a position isn't enough. They have to deliver. How many people have promised the voters that they would do something or they wouldn't do something, then get into office and then do the opposite thing? Like all of them. Like you've got Thomas Massie, you got Ron Paul. Like those are the top two names of people that you could pretty much say if they promised something, they delivered on that promise. They didn't vote on something or they voted for something. Or in the rare cases where they did vote for something that you might have taken issue with, they at least came out and had an explanation and were transparent about it. But they delivered, right? That's why they have a good name. They delivered. Nobody would care about Ron Paul if he was always voting yes with the establishment. It did. Like all the videos that people pass around, they're like, check it out when he was debating college kids and he told that one college kid that, maybe the government should put him on a diet because he looked a little overweight, right? Remember that video? Like if he had done all that and got people excited, like, dude, this dude's the real deal. He is saying the right things. He's going to get into office and he's going to be awesome. But then imagine if he got into office and he just voted yes all the time with whatever Republicans wanted, or most of the time. Nobody would be talking about him. Nobody today would be like, Ron Paul was always right. Because they would be like, yeah, his record sucks. Right? So he's important because he delivered. But somehow today, just talking about it, that's a win. Somehow. But it's not. Because you don't get any of your liberty back because somebody talked about it. Because somebody read a book in college, Blake Masters. Like that's not what gets you back your liberty. What gets you back your liberty is people following through on the word and delivering. So Bondi, did she deliver? No. Talked about that recently, the Epstein files, right? Also the MLK and the Kennedy assassination, but mostly it's centered around the Epstein files. They had the whole big charade. And what did we get? No new information. And then, while that was playing out, she got on Sean Hannity's show and she was all like, yeah, we're going to redact information that's related to the victim, related to national security, or related to grand jury information. And I'm like, well, that's pretty much everything that we might want to know. That's everything that's important. Like what's left? What we already have. And they keep stalling. Oh, I gave him Friday. Oh, this, oh, that. There's always an excuse. We don't have it. They didn't realize how deep the swamp was. Well, if they didn't realize how deep the swamp was, why the hell did you vote for them? Why did you vote for people that didn't even know what they were walking into? Which, by the way, that's a crappy argument because a lot of people tried to sell on me. They were like, because I was like, hey, I'm not voting for Trump because I think he did so terrible in his first term. And they were like, yeah, but he's different now. He's surrounding himself with different people. Things are going to be different. You're going to see. Oh, okay. So people were telling me that he realized his mistake, that he surrounded himself with people that he couldn't trust that were part of the swamp. And this time around, he's surrounding himself with people that are not part of the swamp, and he's going to be able to deliver. Where are those Epstein files again? Oh, that's right. They're still stuck somewhere if they even exist. Who knows? Maybe SD, Southern District, New York, maybe they burnt them all. Maybe they ate them. I don't know. Patel, same with the Epstein files. Also, he didn't shutter the office. Remember that video that was floating around? He was like, yeah, we got too many employees. I'm going to shut this down, make it a museum, and then send everybody out in the field to go catch criminals. I was like, damn, that sounds like a good idea. You should do that. If nothing else, send them out to go get criminals. And then we saw reports. Where he got in there and found out that it was a lot more difficult to transfer people because they got to deal with like moving costs and all this stuff. Like, well, wait a minute. How did you not know this? I could have told you that. And I promise you, I do not have the level of experience that would afford me any consideration for FBI director. But I could have told you if you're going to insist that people get out in the field, possibly move to certain areas where there's, fewer agents and they need more agents so they can, deal with more crime, bigger cities, New York, wherever they need to go. Right. Well, not New York because they're going to be, he was talking about shuttering it in New York, but like go to major cities. I could have told you that like, hey, what's going to happen with their travel expenses? Because they're going to have to try to sell their house and they're going to have to try to get a new house. And then they're going to have so much money that they have to work with. So what happens if this house doesn't sell so fast and they're trying to buy this new house? How does that all play out? Right? You didn't have an answer for that, apparently. What about RFK Jr., the celebrated libertarian candidate? I talked about that too. Now, I'm not really a big fan of the idea of saying this person's libertarian, this person's not a libertarian. I very, very rarely do that. And what I left it with the RFK Jr. on, is he a real libertarian? The only thing that I said was like, look, he is not who members of the party had in mind when they were told they would get a libertarian in the administration. Nothing like him. So you can come at me and be like, dude, you're just playing purity games. No, I'm telling you that if you're honest, you will admit that nobody would have used his name and said, I bet it's going to be RFK at that time. Everybody was all like, is it going to be Dave Smith? Is it going to be this person? Is it going to be that person? You know, somebody that pretty much is widely accepted as a solid libertarian that represents our party. Right? That's what people were looking for. You know it, and I know it. So libertarians that are playing this, you know, pure, you're calling me a purist and all that, GTFO. You just get right on out. Go pack up and move somewhere. Go do something with your time because you're not being honest. But is he delivering results? Well, some people support his move against high fructose corn syrup. I don't. I don't think that's the right way to go about it. I don't think that's going to make America healthy again. But so far, there's no results, but we'll see. It's possible. It's possible that he'll ban high fructose corn syrup, and maybe that'll make a change in the food supply such that people end up eating less. We will see. However, he did use the Health and Human Services to fight anti-Semitism. That's not making America healthy again. We got all these problems with pharmaceuticals. We got problem with people overeating, eating all the wrong things. They're pounding a pack of Doritos and then chasing it with Oreos. And we're going to fight anti-Semitism with the Health and Human Services. Now, he's done some other things that look kind of promising, right? Like I think there's something in the works where he's going to try to get baby formula permitted to be sold here in the United States that comes from that's being sold in Europe. That sounds cool. Like apparently it doesn't have high fructose corn syrup. So like if you're just going to loosen regulations that will allow things to be sold here that once were not, well, I'll support that. And that would be a win. So we'll see. So RFK, kind of iffy. Some things that I don't think are a win, some things that haven't materialized to the point where I think we should reasonably call them a win. Again, just talking about it, not enough. So just so you know, episode 465, that's where I discussed the issues with Pam Bondi, Patel, and RFK Jr. So if you want to go and hear my full thoughts on that, go check out that one. Episode 441, I criticized the move to ban red dye 3, and I give my thoughts on that. I'm not just being a hater here, folks. I've actually been talking about a lot of these issues, and I have different ideas on how they should be approached. So it's iffy that Trump is really draining the swamp. It really seems that there's equal evidence kind of either way. Okay, what about the war in Ukraine? Well, that one looks promising. It's not yet complete, but if he can stop the war, that will be an amazing thing that he has accomplished, right? And I know a lot of people get mad. They're like, oh, you think Ukraine should give up? I think that if America can broker peace between those two countries and that they agree upon it, that whatever they agree upon, it's not my problem. So if Ukraine agrees to give up some land or they agree to do something else, then who are you to say otherwise? People are like, well, then that means Russia will be able to invade. Maybe, maybe not. But again, the question here is, can we stop the war? Can we do it through peace negotiations? And if peace negotiations means that Russia and Ukraine agree to the terms, then I don't want to hear bitching from everybody else. They agreed to it. That's America's place at best, helping to broker this situation. So if he can end this war, by the way, I want to point out with the war in Ukraine, both sides have conscription. And I've made this argument. I said, look, if you're forcing people to go to war, like you are basically saying you have to go potentially die, even though they may not want to. So if I'm a Ukrainian and I say, you know what, I really like this land, but I'd rather just move. Screw it. Russia can have it. and then the government comes along and says, no, DL, we're going to scoop you up and we're going to force you to fight because this is your homeland. That's immoral. And it doesn't matter that it's Ukraine or Russia. It's immoral. If somebody wants to leave, if they decide that that land isn't, if my house right now, if it was invaded by whomever, and I grabbed my wife and my kid and my mother-in-law and said, let's get the hell out of here. Forget this house. Let's get out. They can have it. We'll move down the street. We'll go to another city. Well, imagine somebody going, whoa, 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 DL. No, 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 no. You get your ass back in there. You grab your rifles and then you stand at the windows and you start shooting. And you don't let them take over your house. That would be immoral. And we would all object to it. We would all say, no, no, if DL doesn't want the house, then why are we forcing him to have the house? Same applies in Ukraine and in Russia, right? Mostly Ukraine because Russia invaded, but it's the same principle. They're forcing people to fight that may not want to fight, which means they're forcing people to their deaths. That's immoral. So yes, I will support if he ends the war in Ukraine, and it is looking promising. That would be a win. And I will gladly say it. So hopefully it happens. Middle East conflict. There's some wins there? No, not really. Trump is on record suggesting, not even suggesting, he outright said it, that Israel should, quote, finish the job. That's what he said. They should finish the job. And then recently, he did kind of talk about how the U.S. might take over Gaza. That's a disaster of magnificent proportions just waiting to happen. Take over Gaza? Are you insane? So you have two people fighting over land. Now we want to have three, not people, but two groups fighting over land. Now we're going to have three groups fighting over land? Because I promise you, if Israel thinks the land is theirs and Palestinians believe the land is theirs and they're willing to fight each other over it, and then the U.S. comes in and says, no, we're going to control this land, I really feel confident in saying that they're not going to want, they're going to fight us over that. That we're going to have problems. So that's right now, like, as far as I'm concerned, there's not even a win on the horizon there. So we'll see how that plays out. Here's another objection. People say, Massie won't be primaried anyway. Oh, okay. Is that kind of like when we say, I can steal from this billionaire, he won't even miss it? Like, it's okay to do something, immoral because they're not going to notice anyway. I can steal this, these crackers from the store because Walmart's not going to notice. They'll just write it off, and is the tiniest little blip in their bucket of billions of dollars. No, it's still immoral. The fact that Trump is calling for him to be primaried is a problem. Now, there have been multiple attempts to prime him, and they have all failed. Trump in 2020, that led to Todd McMurtry failing to even get 25%. So good for Thomas Massie. His reputation precedes him. AIPAC, then again, in May 2024, they spent over $300,000 and they failed as well. Okay? But here's the thing. Because people are like, well, see, all these attempts, they failed. It's going to fail again. That is letting down your guard, for starters, which, by the way, Thomas Massie is not doing. We'll get to that. But that's really only part of the story. The other part of the story is that people keep trying. What does that tell you? That tells you the culture in politics is not aligned with Thomas Massie. That means we have a real problem in our government when they keep trying. AIPAC, Trump, whomever else, right? And I want you to consider, Massie stood alone, as far as Republicans are concerned in the House, opposing that recent CR funding bill. Alone. No other Republican voted against it. In other words, he has limited support in Congress. So when the rubber hits that road, sure, some people may come out and defend him, like Senator Mike Lee did, but there's a difference between verbal support and something tangible like a vote. In fact, according to one reporter, let me put this up on the screen here. I got lots of material here today. So here's one reporter, Cami Mondo. She said, Senator CR Math, Mike Lee is inclined to support the CR so long as it remains free of language that would restrict the Trump administration, I'm told. Lee was a no on CR in December. Eyes on John Curtis. He hasn't weighed in yet, but when he was in the House last year, he voted no on the December CR. So that's interesting. Like, there's a good chance that Mike Lee will support it, which means coming out and saying that he supports Thomas Massie doesn't really mean a lot, because at the end of the day, Trump is going to get what he wants. Now imagine if senators, Republican senators, were like, whoa, it passed in the House, and now you're talking about primarying Thomas Massie. How about this? If you want this to pass in the House, or I'm sorry, the Senate, you better play a little bit better ball with Thomas Massie. Right? That's what should happen. They should be like, they can't do it in the House because Trump's call came after the House voted on it. So now the Senate could do that. The Senate could be like, whoa, we're standing in solidarity with our fellow Congress member, and we will be voting no on this. And the way that you can get a yes vote, which I would still disagree with, by the way, but for playing politics, the way that you defend Thomas Massie in politics is you have to have leverage. Otherwise, just saying something, what does that mean? Americans have been saying a lot of things, and their representatives still do the opposite. So clearly, just talking about it, not enough. But no one in Congress appears to be standing up to Trump in any meaningful way. The truth is, Massie only has to fight for his seat because the swamp is still the swamp, and Trump isn't draining it. So I think a lot of people got fooled. All Trump had to do was say nothing. Like, Thomas Massie shouldn't have to focus on the attention of fending off a primary challenge, nor should his supporters have their attention divided. Let me look at this. Where's that other clip that I got? That other image here. Where is this? I want you to take a look at this. So here is this. If you're looking at this on the screen, and if you're not, this is what I read to you if you're listening via podcast. This is what I read to you from Donald Trump earlier, thanking the House Freedom Caucus. And what I'm showing on the screen is that the middle section, which represents about half of everything he said in this post, is related to Thomas Massie. He didn't have to say any of that. This is what he could have said in his post. Thank you to the House Freedom Caucus for just delivering a big blow to the radical left Democrats and their desire to raise taxes and shut our country down. They hate America and all it stands for. That's why they allowed millions of criminals to invade our nation. Sometimes it takes great courage to do the right thing. Skip past all the Thomas Massie stuff. Anyway, thank you again to the House Freedom Caucus for your very important vote. We need to buy some time in order to make America great again, greater than ever before. Unite and win. That's all he had to say. He could have left all of that bit about Massie out. By the way, if you think he's going to back down, I don't think so, because just before the broadcast, I happened to see that on Truth Social. I don't have it pulled up, but he doubled down on it. And he put Congressman Thomas Massie with Congressman in quotes, like he wasn't a real congressman. And I'm seeing that a lot of people are starting to repeat this lie that Trump put out about how Thomas Massie voted for all the continuing resolutions in the past. It's actually not true. Or I think he might have said he voted for Biden's. It's getting a little garbled depending on who you're reading it from. But some people are like, oh, he voted for him all the time. Other people are like, hey, he voted for the Biden one. Well, Thomas Massie came out and he said, you're right. I did vote on this one. Here are the circumstances. Here's what was supposed to happen. That didn't happen. He said Mike Johnson reneged on the deal, which is interesting that he points out Mike Johnson reneged on the deal, because who is the Speaker of the House that a lot of people opposed? Speaker Mike Johnson, right? We're getting a lot of L's, and people aren't fessing up that maybe Trump isn't who he pretended to be. All right, here's another objection. I like this one. This one is fun. Kamala would be worse, and we wouldn't have the wins that we've received so far. Now, this argument never really sat well with me. I heard people say it before the election. They're like, look, we got to vote for Trump because Kamala is going to be so much worse. And I don't actually disagree. When it comes to policy, I tend to align, or at least I used to, a little bit more with the Republicans than I do the Democrats. Today, it's kind of a toss-up. Like they're kind of they're supporting things that seem to be the opposite of what they used to be. So it's not quite the same anymore. But that tends to be like if you were to be like policy-wise, and you look at the things that I would support, you might find more of an overlap with the Republican Party. I'm still a libertarian, but so I found this argument very interesting. And I kind of agree. Like, I think she would have been worse. I think for many reasons she would have been a terrible president. I just don't think that she even had the appropriate know-how or the intelligence to run a country. This is not a black woman thing. So if you're one of those people, get the hell out. No need for you. This is just simply Kamala Harris as the individual. Kamala Harris, I don't think was in any way suitable for the role, period. But it is true that we can look at things that Trump has done or is trying to do and then ask if Kamala, or any Dem for that matter, would have even went in that direction. And the answer is likely not. So it's a slam dunk, right? Case closed? Not so fast. Again, that's only half the story. So our current Congress, in the House, 218 Republicans, 215 Democrats, 2 vacancies. In the Senate, 53 Republicans, 45 Democrats, 2 independents. So Republicans control Congress. And the continuing resolution passed despite Massie's no vote. He didn't even come close to stopping it. It passed. Okay? And they have Congress, which is a lot of power, by the way. It's actually more power than the president. Because think about it. If Congress passes a bill and the president doesn't like it, he can veto it. And then Congress can be like, oh, we just need more votes. And then we can override your veto. And then it's a done deal. Right? Like, the president actually he's not supposed to have that level of power that 535 people together should have. Hello? Right? So I'm not so sure that it's as easy as saying, oh, Kamala would have been worse. But the most important reason that I would argue is that is when you I lost my thought there. So the most important, I think, issue is that, yes, Kamala would probably not have done some of the things that we would have liked, but Congress could override that. But more importantly, if she tried to do things that we explicitly didn't like, everybody on the right would be throwing a fit. So if in any way she suggested that Thomas Massie's seat should be taken by a Democrat because, he didn't pass, a continuing resolution, she would have been skewered alive by everybody. Everybody. Right? If she had said, hey, we're going to take over Gaza, everybody would have thrown a fit. Like, everybody on the right. They were throwing a big fit. So I think there would have been more scrutiny on the things that she's doing, the things that she might have done that overlap with things that Trump is doing. Some things, not everything, right? I think there's a little bit of overlap on things that Trump is doing and things that Kamala would have done. And I think that Republicans, conservatives, right-wingers, they would have yelled and stomped their feet and made all kind of noise. I think Republicans would. So I think there would have been more scrutiny on her for those kind of things, scrutiny that should be on Trump, but isn't, because he's their guy. So I'm not sure that she would have actually been all that worse. And it really depends, on the conspiracy theories that you believe. I'm still kind of questioning. I'm like, wait a minute. Elon Musk bought Twitter for $44 billion. He's doing all this fighting just so that people can say the N-word on Twitter. That's what it's all about. He just loves freedom so much. He has no vested interest. There's nothing else behind the scenes that he's looking to accomplish that we don't know about. Seems like a lot of money just so people could say whatever they want on Twitter. I don't know. I'm a little skeptical. I think and it's not like he's got some ulterior motive. It just may be like, hey, if I play ball with this guy, I will get better contracts. I'm trying to go to the moon. These contracts will help me go to the moon. Maybe that's it. Could be that simple. That probably is that. So anyway, Republicans control Congress. I think right-wingers would have skewered Kamala alive for virtually everything, including things that we might see that she would have done if we had like two alternate universes together to watch how they played out. We could look and say, oh, look, she's doing some of the same things that Trump is doing. I think the right wingers would have yelled and screamed about that. But here's the thing, Trump, he didn't have to say anything. He had zero reason to say anything. The bill passed. Republicans have the Congress, right? Like, and I just showed you, like, he could just left that out. And he could have thanked the House Freedom Caucus and moved on. But no. And now Thomas Massie is already making plans to fend off yet another challenge, right? He's making plans. So this is not like, look, let me show it to you right here. Why don't more representatives stand on principle? It's a good question. Because telling the truth can get you in hot water. I'm going to need your help. I will run again because we need at least one person in Congress who won't cave because we don't have anybody else. Can you show support by contributing now? And then he quotes Donald Trump saying, with his whole primary Massie post. So Thomas Massie is already like, all right, guess we got to start running this campaign rather than running a normal campaign that might take fewer resources. Now he's in a position where he has to explicitly say, all right, let's take up this fight. But he shouldn't have to. He should not have to be doing that. Let me see what else I got in my notes here. Here's another point that I would like to make. Put another way, think about any primary challenge that would have happened under Kamala. I don't even know that Thomas Massie would have had to worry too much about it. I mean, maybe. I mean, maybe that's not fair. Maybe if it was AIPAC again, who has money and can contribute a lot of money, maybe they can. But now it's the president who's not even going to donate. He just talks about it. He just says it. And people are going to fall in line. Now, another objection that people came at me with was, well, didn't Massie support Trump? Shouldn't he be held accountable? Sure, you can look at it that way. But you can also look at it and say that Thomas Massie and he has his own political capital and his own political strategy. And that should be different than an entire political party. Like his strategy, his political capital is not the same as mine. So he's going to have to work things differently. And perhaps it made sense. Like, hey, I'll play ball with Trump. Trump will play ball with me. Also, Massie didn't run around blasting the Libertarian candidate, nor did he blast Libertarians who supported the Libertarian candidate over Trump. He didn't put him on blast. He didn't do all that. But Libertarians did, right? Because in my opinion, they need to accept some responsibility. They voted Trump, and they were vicious to anybody that wasn't Trump and anybody that didn't support Trump. I felt it. I go dig up tweets and show them to you all night long. All right, here's another argument. Is this the last one? Yeah, this is the last one that we'll get to the takeaway. Afraid of relevance, addicted to losing, party over liberty, purist, hall monitor libertarian. I get called those all the time, right? When I'm like, hey, maybe you should be responsible for your vote for Trump. And people they resort to that. They're just like, oh, you're just addicted to losing. You're just a purist. You're just playing purity games. Those are all what we call ad hominem attacks. There's no argument. They're not attacking my argument. And the reason I've been pointing out all my podcast episodes so that you can see that I've been talking and talking and talking, and I've been making argument after argument after argument. And you should probably attack the arguments. But no, people come at me and they're like, purity, hall monitor, you're just addicted to losing. You don't know what it's like to be relevant. Okay. Well, sounds like you've got it all worked out then. You just say some names and bam, you're good to go. Not a single one is an argument of substance. Convince me with all the information that I presented that I'm looking at this wrong. Come back and say, okay, DL, I see the information you've put out. Here's where you're getting it wrong. Furthermore, I'll point this out, I never objected to libertarians who simply chose to vote for somebody they felt was a better candidate. My clash was with people in party leadership who did so or hinted at it, because I feel like that's inappropriate for party leadership, and other libertarians who insulted me for not being convinced enough to vote for Trump. That's my beef. And I said this a long time ago. I said, look, if you just feel like Trump better represents you, and you're like, yeah, I'm supporting Trump, and here's why. I think he's good. I think you should support him. I have no beef with you. And I said that a long time ago. And that is still true today. I mean, I always felt like you were taking a gamble, but hey, maybe I'm willing to be wrong. And I'm on record stating that I didn't think that libertarians had sufficient political capital to hold Trump to his word. You do realize he can't run again. So what is it? What leverage, what political capital, what anything do you have or did you have that you could say, hey, we're going to ensure you keep your word? I saw people, they were like, we'll primary the next Republican. Okay, why does Trump care about that again? Why does he care if you primary the next Republican candidate? Why would he care if you ran a strong libertarian candidate that you couldn't seem to do this time around? Why would he care in 2028 if you run a strong libertarian candidate who just so happens to divide the vote and cause a loss to the Democrats? Why would Trump care about that? If he's already done all of his stuff and made his name, and the man's like, what, 78? He's going to be gone in a while. Why would he care? That's not a threat. He's a lame duck. Lame duck. So like, I mean, again, he did free Ross, and I am unambiguous in giving credit where it's due. He may end the war in Ukraine. But the question for me has always been, is the juice worth the squeeze? The squeeze. I'm not so convinced. I'm not really that convinced that, hey, now let's clear this up because I know people are going to get angry. When I say it's not worth the squeeze and people are like, oh, you don't think Ross's life matter? I think it does matter. And I think that if Angela, our former chair, said, you know what, I don't think I can accomplish a whole lot at the federal level, but by golly, I'm going to get Ross free, and I will burn whatever libertarian capital I have to make that happen, because I think that as a chair, doing at least that one good deed is worth it. Fair. I have no issue with that. Not really why people voted for you, in my opinion, but if that's how you see it, then just come right out and say, hey, this is what I did. I knew you were going to be angry about it, but I wanted to accomplish something, and I just don't feel like we were in a position to accomplish anything else at the federal level. And I hope that if I could accomplish this one thing, that would give some motivation for people behind me to say, hey, we can get something at the federal level. We can get a concession. It may not be a lot in terms of liberty overall, but we can get something. So for me, the question is everything that's happening, is it all worth, is it worth the squeeze? Well, it's yet to be determined, but I wasn't convinced then. I'm still not convinced now, especially now that he's trying to primary Thomas Massie, somebody who is arguably, not even really arguably, it's no argument, but for the haters out there, arguably the best person in Congress, the absolute best. If Congress was filled half with Thomas Massies, we would have an objectively way better country. Not just Congress, but a whole country. The whole country would be better. All right. So what is the takeaway? Because a friend asked me this earlier and he was like, dude, what's the actionable takeaway? And I was like, that's a really good question. I don't want to just beat my chest and just yell and be like, oh, angry, angry, angry. Right? Like, we could do more than that. That's what this show's about. This show's about offering better answers. So here's my actionable takeaway. Back in 2022, when I supported a major change in leadership within the LP, I supported it on the basis that we needed bolder messaging and this is the most important, the idea that the party should put less energy into federal races and more energy into local races. They had a name for it, Project Decentralized Revolution. It was the idea that libertarians can gain most ground by focusing on local races for two purposes. Number one, they'd be easier to win and require fewer resources. Number two, winning those seats could simultaneously show people how libertarians could actually govern, or how they would actually govern, and some of those seats could be used to push back against federal power. In fact, if you don't believe me, let's hear from Michael Heiss himself. I unearthed this cool video that you're going to like because it exactly tells you why I voted for it and what I think the answer is. So this is from his Reason Magazine interview back in January of 2023. So let's hear what they ask him and what he has to say. It's about 2 minutes.
Michael, I guess let's start off with talking about the Decentralized Revolution document the Mises Caucus dropped earlier this year. Project Decentralized Revolution for a new libertarian party. I hear echoes of Murray Rothbard's For a New Liberty in that title. But give us what's the elevator pitch? What is Project Decentralized Revolution?
So echoes of Murray Rothbard as well as Ron Paul with the revolution there. But
Yeah.
but so the elevator pitch is the point of the takeover was always to develop a political strategy in the long term for the political party that is the LP. And to this point, I don't think there has been a cohesive strategy.
Okay, I'm going to stop him right here. This is in 2023, and he said, I don't think there's been a cohesive strategy. Well, guess what? I still don't think in 2025, I believe there is still not a cohesive strategy because I haven't seen it, at least not along this line. I keep hearing people talk about it, but I haven't seen the results. Let's continue listening.
For as long as I can remember, as long as I can tell, I think there's just kind of been this, well, we just want to run candidates. We just want to get ballot access and nothing that kind of is sustainable in the long term. And so the effect of that.
Okay, I agree with him there. I agree that when I looked at that's why I supported the takeover, because I was like, all right, look, I disagree with the idea of running candidates just to run candidates. I don't like the idea, and I'm on record saying this for years now, that, hey, if you run, you should run to win, which means you need to be of the caliber of a person, of the type of person that can win that particular seat that you chose. So the example I always give, and I'm going to tell you right up front, the answer is no before you even ask. But if I were to run for city council, okay, I might be able to run a good campaign running for city council. If you ask me to run for governor, or if I say I'd like to run for governor, the answer should be, the response to me should be, DL, no. You have not proven yourself to be of the caliber that can run at that level. That is not for you. You need to go do something else. Maybe you stay with the podcast. Maybe you run locally. Maybe you just chair an affiliate. Maybe you do this. Maybe you do that. Right? So I agree with him that we've been a little bit too haphazard with running candidates and just like, yay. Because I don't know how many times I saw people, and it got on my nerves. People be like, I ran as a candidate 5 years ago. I'm like, okay, well, what have you done since? And what happened with that? Did you get any results? Did you make any political connections? Did you develop any political capital? Did anybody for whatever seat that you ran, did they come back to try to talk to you later? Did anybody try to get you to advise? Did they try to reach out and say, will you be on this committee? Did any of that happen? Or did you just run a limp-wristed race and then boast about how you were once upon a time a libertarian candidate? I wish I had the clip, but we don't need to play it. But remember in Napoleon Dynamite, Uncle Rico, and he was all like reminiscing back. He's like some 40-year-old man, and he's reminiscing back when he was in college and coach wouldn't put him in this final play of the game. And he's like, we'd have taken state if the coach had just put me in. Right. Like he's just reliving this old memory and failed to do anything after that. That's what a lot of libertarian candidates have done. So I agree with Michael on this. Let's continue listening.
That has been to kind of spin our wheels for a while. And there's a lot of people who have done a lot of good work, but we've got to develop something in the long term. And something that takes stock of where we're at within political reality right now as a third party and what's realistic for us and attainable for us, and use that as a foundation to build into the future 5 years, 10 years, 15, 20.
Okay, so 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, 20 years. So the takeover was in 2022. It is now 2025. That's 3 years. What was the plan for 5 years or, in 2 more years? What were we expecting? What was the actionable plan that was put in place that they laid out that we can count on happening and seeing results in 2027? I guess you can say 2026 since that's the midterms, right? What was that? What was that plan? What was that he's talking about? What happened? Well, nothing. Right? And when I say nothing, I don't mean absolutely nothing. I'm being a little loose with my words. What I'm saying is not enough for people to go, dude, we've got this campaign and it's going to generate a lot of momentum. It's going to be awesome. No, we're all talking about whether or not we should have supported Trump and who's the real libertarian and who cares about wins, while their Congress is disregarding Doge, while Trump is trying to primary Thomas Massie. Like, where's our action plan? I don't see it.
Years.
Yeah, what's the core essence? Because it's true, it's a long range strategy document, but what's kind of at the core of the strategy?
Well, again, the beginning of the document is a lot about kind of accepting maybe some bitter truths, and
maybe it's time to accept some more bitter truth.
Shooting for the top is not helping us, and it's not helping us to earn trust. And the concept of trust is something that is repeated over and over again in that document. And so basically what we're saying is we should shoot locally. But when I say locally, it's just the same as I said in our first interview at Reno. We got to shoot for city council. We got to shoot for mayor, sheriff, judge, school board, seats that are able to do something about our problem with the federal government today.
Okay. That sounds exactly like the same thing that I supported and have been going on and on about ever since. I made a big stink, especially when Jacksonville had not one, not two, but 3 candidates running for city council, because I'm old enough to remember that when all 3, I remember all 3 were at one point begging the Libertarian Party to promote their races. Like I had to talk Tub down because he was like getting really frustrated. And I was like, dude, maybe they just don't see your post, whatever. I was running cover for the Libertarian Party while I had candidates running for city council that Michael Heiss said is what we should do. And we had them. And I had to beg for support. They begged for support. But maybe there were other candidates and they couldn't get to everybody. Nope. I didn't see any. Because you know what else I did? Let's see, where's that note that I had? Did I put it down in here? Maybe I had a note somewhere in here. Oh yeah, here it is. Between September 2023 and February 2024, I had a weekly series called LP Happenings. And I'm telling you this because our former chair, when she was on the podcast with me, so this wasn't like she said it to my face. So cool, whatever. I can respect people that say things to my face. One of the suggestions she made was that I was online. I was online too much and that it skewed my view. It's a fair argument. Here's the thing. Between September of 2023 and February of 2024, I had a weekly series called LP Happenings. What I did was I literally went to every single state affiliate, all 50 of them, every week to see what events that they were promoting, what candidates they had running, so that I could promote them with whatever limited amount of reach that I had. I did that. And I eventually quit because there was so little information available. I was struggling to find information. I started repeating basically the same things over and over. And I was like, okay, well, this is not interesting. And there were a few candidates here and there. And then there were even a few state affiliates that were like, well, we don't use our website. And I was like, are you dumb? Because if I'm somebody that doesn't know anything about you, like let's say I'm in Florida and I'm not a libertarian, but I hear about the Libertarian Party and I'm like, all right, let me go see. I'm going to go to Google and I'm going to type in Libertarian Party of Florida. And I'm going to look for a Libertarian Party of Florida website. And I'm going to go to that and I'm going to be like, hey, looks like they have some events I can go to. Right? And state parties, I don't remember which ones. There was like 1 or 2. Or they weren't really the whole party. It was just like an individual speaking maybe on behalf, or whether they should have been or not. I don't know. But I had a couple of people. They argued. They're like, yeah, that's not how we use our social media. Like, well, how do you promote then? Where do I go to get this information? So when I say I don't think that they were doing it, it's because I went out looking for it and I couldn't find it. I went to their own state websites and I found very limited information. Some of the information was months old. So yeah, I tried and I really did my best from where I'm sitting to help this strategy move forward. And I just didn't see it. So what is my solution? Because we should not just simply get online and badger people and argue and be like, oh, you're a terrible person. You're not a real libertarian. We need to come to the table with some actual, tangible, real, meaningful answers. So here, number 1, simple. Heavier focus on local elections, like what we were told would happen. Number 2, motivate people to run in the level of races that Heiss once spoke about. So like city council, school board, mayor, sheriff, those kind of things. Create campaigns for support for people running in these roles. we also probably should have some criteria and say, look, if you want our support, you need to do these things. You need to level up on your public speaking. You need to, stop wearing dirty shirts or whatever, right? Whatever might be appropriate for that particular race. Some races are more casual. Maybe somebody can get away with just wearing, a button-up shirt and some jeans. Maybe that'll work. Maybe the town that they're in is more casual, whatever, right? But these are the kind of things that we need to be having conversations about. And then we need to, when we win those positions, we need to show people what libertarian governance looks like. That's not purity. That's not fear of relevance. That's not addiction to losing. That's not party over liberty. It's literally what I voted for in 2022 and still haven't seen. As soon as the 2024 election got underway, that's what I heard about. That's what I heard about. And it's sad. I didn't really hear people talking about the decentralized revolution that we were supposed to have. It should have been, you could have done it concurrently. What I heard was you're either supporting Trump or you're a lowbird or some other juvenile insult. And I'm not excited that Trump is doing the things that I dislike. I would rather that he prove me entirely wrong, but it's just not the case. He's saying some good things. He's delivered on a few things, and he's doing and saying things that I think are terrible. And many of those things I've been warning about. So it's not like I just said Trump's going to do some bad things and then he did bad things. And I go, see, I told you he was going to do that one bad thing that I never actually mentioned. No, that's not how it played out. I said, I have some concerns here. I said a long time ago, hey, Congress didn't flip over. I think we need to be careful because I don't think that, I think there's an opportunity for him not to deliver on some things. Now, was I over cynical? Probably. And that's fair. I think with politicians, I think they've demonstrated that being too cynical is a good thing. And I think it's a good thing that some people took a risk and took a chance and said, I'm going to vote for Trump. Right? Because we can't always be no. Now, I know, that might sound like odd, like, hey, I supported Chase Oliver, the Libertarian candidate. But at the end of the day, every candidate has to earn your vote. And if the Libertarian candidate didn't earn your vote and a Republican or a Democrat candidate did, then so be it. Right? Now, let me reiterate and be unequivocally clear. I support a heavy focus on running local candidates to gain the trust and demonstrate that we have awesome, sound ideas. As I've discussed in the past, I'm not someone who believes the party should always run a candidate in every single race. I believe key races are important, as are ensuring the right person is running in it. I think party leaders should avoid even a hint of support of non-libertarian candidates, and that is what I've done myself. But I have voted for people that weren't libertarian here locally. I have voted for Republicans and I have voted for Democrats. So this whole idea that DL is all about purity, that's not really true. Again, you don't know what you're talking about, GTFO. And the only thing that I really ask of people is that you don't actively run interference against the libertarian candidate. And that is, tell people why you think your preferred candidate is the right selection, and then sidestep any criticism of the libertarian candidate. You could just say, look, I'm supporting Trump because I think that he's going to win or has a strong chance of winning. And he's made some promises to us. And I would like him to fulfill those promises. And I would like to be a voter that can, yell at him and say, I voted for you and you didn't deliver what you promised. Okay, fair enough. That's fair. I believe those things will strengthen our party, our movement, and provide better candidates than we've seen in the past. That's where I am. All right. This podcast has run fairly long, almost 2 hours. Let me get to some comments and then get the heck out of here. Let's see. Where are we here? Joe Anush says, I agree with Trump. Massie should be out of the Republican Party and join the Libertarian Party. That would be fair. I don't think that he should be pushed out of the party, but if he decided that he wanted to join the party, I would welcome him with arms wide open. I think he'd be a great addition to our party. Let's see. Time surfing alien says, I like Massie. Yes. He's very likable and he's very consistent and he's exactly what our representatives should be, but they're not, but he is. He you would have to go back to Ron Paul to find somebody that really represents the best possible candidate that you could ask for. That is a human being. Like, I don't think you could ask for better candidates. Oh, I'm sorry, representatives. Let's see here. That Liberty Lady points out, I've seen that Thomas Massie is a, quote, budget hawk. I'm okay with that label. I think it's a great label. I think it's a great label. He needs to be, because you know what? Nobody else is. I mean, all the Republicans passed it. The Democrats that voted against the continuing resolution, they only did so because it was a Republican thing. Let's be honest. If that had been Joe Biden, they would have all voted for it. We know how this works. Let's see. What else we got? That Liberty Lady points out, if Doge found waste, shouldn't the CR have those cut from that? Yes, but they didn't. Let's see what else we got here. Joe News points out, getting ballot access is literally for the long term. It is. And I've always supported the idea of, now some states ballot access is a lot less, like here in Florida, we have ballot access. We don't have to fight for it. Alabama, they got to fight for it. They spent like what, $250,000 back in 2022 in order to get ballot access. Then they ran like 64 candidates, right? So, you know, like some states, they really do have to fight for it. New York, ballot access is pretty much a pipe dream at this point. They keep changing things and making it difficult for third parties to get ballot access. You know, so if you were strategic and you say, and if the Libertarian Party of New York were to say, okay, well, here in New York, we're going to do something different because the cost to get ballot access is so high that it's just unreasonable to even go for it. We have to take a different approach. Okay, fair. I would be okay with that, right? And I would be okay with saying, all right, we don't have a candidate for governor here in Florida. Okay, a worthwhile candidate. We're not going to run one. We're not just going to throw anybody up there necessarily, right? So I would be okay with that because Florida, they don't have to worry about it. I think Georgia maybe, but some states, the presidential race, the federal race, if they get a certain percentage, then they keep ballot access. Some of them also will include if the governor race gets a certain percentage, they get to keep ballot access. So in those particular states, I think they need to really work hard and say, okay, what can we do to really maximize our opportunity to retain ballot access? Now, I don't think that anybody should rely entirely at the federal level because it is so dang hard. But we should still run a candidate because they still get attention and they can bring attention to down ballot candidates. So it is definitely a good thing. Ballot access is a worthy goal, right? Like a goal, not the goal, a goal. That's one of them. We should have several. Let's see what else we got here. Let's see. Joe News points out, you're going to freak out when you find out who is sharing 99% of the candidate posts from the LP Twitter account. I am not, because I know who did it. And I thank you so much, sir, for your service. All right, folks, that's my show for today. Hope you enjoyed it. I got to get the heck out of here. And thank you for bearing with me for such a long podcast episode. All right, see you. Again, I will not be here tomorrow morning because it is now after 7 o'clock. I'm going to go be with my family. And then I got some things to do in the morning to be with my family to compensate for the time that I took out this evening. So I will see you guys Friday morning. Thank you for watching. And I hope you found this episode informative and inspiring. Be sure to catch me Monday through Friday, 7:30 a.m. for an informed discussion on politics and culture. Make sure that you're subscribed to my YouTube channel, or if you prefer my Rumble channel, you can go to youtube.libertydad.com or you can go to rumble.libertydad.com. While you are there, let me know how I'm doing by leaving me a comment. You can also become part of the community by heading over to libertydad.locals.com. Remember, if you're a champion of liberty, your business is people and your product is liberty. I want you to have a great week. Catch you next time. But for now, I'm out.